I'm James Malone of Palber Films, which is a very small film company that I started a year ago. I'm an ex-bootneck, and my connection to Jen Ditt and Chris is he was a BCR out to our section or troop on Herrick Night. So we go back a long way, and I caught up with him at the last Jen Ditt networking event in Bristol. And I'd say, I'll just tell you about my journey into filmmaking and leaving the corps. I'd always wanted to be a filmmaker, but I was kind of dissuaded from going to university for one reason or another, and ended up joining the corps because that's easier. So, and actually, I think it's probably true, to be honest. But joined the corps, and then did a short career, 5 years long. Left and got into maritime security standard, and then decided that I wanted a bit more because it was kind of dead end, and got into rope access, but still had a burning desire to be kind of creative in some sort of format, whether that be photography or videography or whatever else. I just kind of didn't know. But ultimately, rope access paid quite well at the time, and I was doing some interesting jobs. So I'd started off doing some construction, and then moved to New Zealand and Australia. So working on earthquakes in gold mines offshore, doing conservation work, building bridges out in really remote parts of New Zealand, and being on random islands off the coast of Australia. But it was kind of really, you're at the kind of at the hand of someone else, and you're just kind of chasing cash, and I found it wasn't very fulfilling for me, and I was getting more and more depressed about it, I think, because I had this idea or dream about what it was I wanted to do, and I was just kind of it's like watching a sand timer. You just like time is slipping away, and you're just filling your life with buying stuff, or it just wasn't fulfilling. And I ended up buying a camera after quitting drinking. That's another story, but that was a really good outlet for me, and that started to snowball. And it was also a really good distraction from my career as a rope access technician. And by this time, I was a level 3, and I was running projects and responsible for small teams, and doing jobs, all around the world, and really having quite a lot of responsibility, or there was got a lot of danger involved, etc., etc. And I'm having photography as a creative outlet was really important. It was a nice break, and something I could finally kind of start ticking boxes, I suppose, for myself rather than for someone else. And then fast forward to moving back to the UK. It was COVID. I had no income, and I had to take a job in the steelworks in Port Talbot, but I just started taking my camera to work and trying to work on, if I was had to go and do an inspection, I would make sure that those inspection photos were the best they'd ever seen, kind of thing. And I was getting photos of the lads at work, which the company could use for the website, etc., for free, because it was just all like a practice period myself. And even to the extent of if someone was lit well by a window eating their lunch on the half an hour that you had off at the world's worst steel refinery, then I would get that photo because it was all just practice, with a view to potentially going full time. And then, that lasted for about a year. I was doing jobs at the weekend and in my spare time, and through a mutual connection with John at the T&E. And I met Jeff as randomly on a course years ago in the corps, and then 5 years later bumped into him on a beach in Sri Lanka, and he had just started T&E. And then get to me working in the steelworks, I'd kind of decided to take that leap. Enough was enough. I just kind of had to be bold, and before telling everyone I was a rope access technician, I just said no. Today I'm a filmmaker and photographer, and I had no clients. I had occasional work with Simon, which is really good, and a few other smaller jobs at gyms and fitness clubs and a cafe. And those jobs were really important in that I got paid next to no money, but I still wanted to do them. And I actually really disliked 90% of those jobs, so it helped me refine kind of where my interests sort of relaying. And it definitely wasn't with filming slow-mos of cheesecakes in roadside cafes. And my kind of interest lay with people, real stories, authentic stories that you can feel and are emotive, and that's kind of where Palper was born, although it didn't have that name at the time. I was given an opportunity to go on a ski trip with the Royal Marines Association, and I had never done any fundraising for them and kind of felt guilty that I was on the trip. There was a lot of guys there with with very serious injuries, and mine weren't physical. So as a way of saying thank you, I made a short documentary, only 5 minutes, but they liked it and used some aspects of it. And then, get to where we are now. Simon kind of took me on as the full-time filmmaker, with like a certain element of freedom to do my own stuff as well. So it fits really well. But I'd say lessons learned, I suppose we need to talk about, isn't it? And like starting a business, is it?
I would say just tell the guy, because just what you said there, that conversation we had about taking you on, your imposter syndrome around it.
Oh yeah, I didn't know how to. The imposter syndrome is something that's incredibly real, because if you imagine I'd left school at 18 or 17 or whatever it was, I had an idea to be a creative person, but then I changed tactic and become, steely-eyed deliverer of death or whatever in the Corps, Jen, and then done security. So I'd created a new identity, and it wasn't a creative person. So therefore, I think I couldn't be that person because I'd already become, the bootneck or the security contractor or the rope access guy. So it was really difficult for me to figure out how much I was worth. And like initial, like the first sum I came up with for a month's work for an entire business's creative like content and output was like £800 or something, which is absolutely mental. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that, but it was through sort of Simon and John really empowered me to make those decisions and gave me a lot of kind of feedback and sort of told me about their mistakes and how to price yourself out. Because if you don't, the costing is really important, because if you don't get that right, then you're kind of handcuffing yourself. I think that's something I really found, and you end up being really stressed. And when you're stressed, you can't do your best work because you're just worried about trying to cram everything onto your plate because you don't believe in yourself. But I would say something we kind of all talked about recently was the price then dictates the client that you get, and if the price is something that ends up kind of giving other people belief in you and what you can deliver, and gives you a lot more flexibility. And a year later down the line, we've had, I've gone up in price a little bit, and I'm happy with it, and we're all happy with it, I think. But what that's done is given me belief in myself to price jobs as they should be priced. And if people don't want to pay that, then that's okay. Like, I'm okay with that. That's just what it costs. And it's really given me a lot of confidence in kind of delivering small projects and talking to clients, etc., and just being happy to walk away from jobs.
Less than a minute left. So anything you want to say in the next 40 seconds?
Yeah, 40 seconds. Okay, I'd say the biggest thing is probably a Jim Carrey quote that I kind of got into filmmaking with, and that's, he saw his dad failing as an accountant and not being a comedian. So what you can take away from that is you can do a job you hate and suck at it and still fail, or you can do a job you hate and still fail at it. So you might as well do something you're passionate about, because the best case scenario is you absolutely kill it and you succeed, and then you're just doing something you really enjoy. You have to do what you want. Yeah, cool.
That was bloody good. I think people take a lot away from that.